It starts with a question almost too simple to take seriously. What if the system isn't broken? What if it's working exactly as designed? People look at modern life and see chaos. Rising prices, stagnant wages, debt that grows faster than income. Housing slipping out of reach. Healthcare turning into a luxury. Education priced like a high-risk investment. Everyone feels like they're running a race where the finish line keeps moving. But what if that isn't a flaw? What if the system was engineered to make escape nearly impossible? Because once you trace the origins of the institutions that shape your life, the banks, the credit markets, the corporations, the political structures, a disturbing truth emerges. This wasn't accidental. This wasn't random. Over generations, a small network of financial architects, policymakers, and corporate titans build a system that looks free on the surface, but locks you in at every level. To understand this, you have to go back to the early 20th century, when the modern economic machine was born. After the Panic of 1907, America's wealthiest bankers and industrialists realized something. Chaotic markets created opportunity for them, but uncertainty made the public unmanageable. They needed a new kind of system, one that looked stable, predictable, and democratic, but ultimately kept control in the hands of those who designed it. Thus began the blueprint. Institutions that pretended to be public but served private interests. Policies that appeared neutral but tilted the playing field. Financial innovations that promised opportunity but created dependency. Over time, the system became so vast, so interconnected, that escape wasn't just difficult, it was structurally impossible. Take money itself. At first, money was a simple medium of exchange. But once central banks took control, money became something else entirely. A tool of influence, a lever of policy, a weapon. Inflation, interest rates, liquidity. These weren't economic concepts anymore. They became behavioral control mechanisms. Inflation quietly erases savings. Interest rates dictate whether people borrow, invest, or work longer. Liquidity determines which businesses survive. But the key is this. None of these levers are in your hands. Debt became the second pillar of the system. Before the mid-20th century, debt wasn't a lifestyle. It was rare, stigmatized, even dangerous. But the system needed citizens who were compliant, predictable, and tied to long-term obligations. So debt was normalized. Mortgages became the American dream. Student loans became an investment in your future. Credit cards became financial freedom. And little by little, the public walked voluntarily into a cage made of monthly payments. Because here's the truth almost no one admits. A population in debt cannot rebel. A population in debt cannot take risks, challenge systems, or walk away. A population in debt becomes the perfect fuel for an economic machine that requires constant labor, consumption, and stability. But the designers didn't stop at money and debt. They went after time itself. Over the last 50 years, productivity skyrocketed. Technology made workers faster, smarter, more efficient. By all logical measures, people should be working less. But the opposite happened. Working hours grew. Burnout became universal. Boundaries dissolved. Why? Because the system wasn't built to reward productivity. It was built to consume it. If people had too much free time, they might question things. They might organize. They might resist. But when every moment is spent earning money to service debt, saving for the future, or keeping up with rising costs, who has time to challenge the system? This is the escape trap, economic pressure that keeps the public too busy to notice the cage forming around them. Then came the final layer. Dependency disguised as convenience. Digital infrastructure, subscription models, algorithmic feeds, and corporate consolidation created an environment where opting out is almost impossible. You can't live without a phone. You can't navigate society without digital banking. You can't find work without online platforms. You can't access information without algorithms deciding what you see. The system now stretches into every dimension of life. Your identity, your communication, your financial survival. And the more digital it becomes, the more trackable, manipulable, and predictable people are. The trap is elegant. The trap is quiet. And the trap is resilient, because it isn't enforced by chains, laws, or visible coercion. It's enforced by necessity. And necessity is the strongest prison ever invented. Over time, the designers realized something crucial. Rather than limit freedom outright, it was more effective to create systems where freedom technically exists, but exercising it comes at a cost, so high that most people won't even attempt it. You are free to leave your job, but not free from your bills. Free to reject consumer culture, but not free from rising living costs. Free to protest the system, but not free from the consequences. This is how a system becomes inescapable, not through force, but through design. When you zoom out far enough, you see the architecture. A monetary system that controls behavior. A debt system that ensures dependence. A labor system that demands time. A digital system that tracks movement. An economic system that inflates costs faster than wages. A political system that keeps power balanced away from the public. And all of it intertwined so tightly that even if one part breaks, the others hold the structure together. This is why people feel trapped. Because they are. Not physically. Not legally. Structurally. And the most disturbing part is this. The next phase of the system is already here, and it goes deeper than anything you've seen so far. To understand a system this vast, this intentional, this durable, you must confront an uncomfortable truth. Systems don't build themselves. Someone, or more accurately, a group of someones, designed it. Not as a conspiracy in a smoke-filled room, but as a slow, deliberate evolution shaped by incentives, ideology, and power. Look back at the early 20th century. The financial titans who shaped the modern world weren't merely businessmen. They were institution builders. Families like the Morgans, Rockefellers, Mellons, and Warburgs didn't just accumulate wealth, they built frameworks. They funded universities, influenced policy, advised presidents, and shaped public opinion. Their worldviews became national doctrine. Their interests became national priorities. This wasn't villainy. It was strategy. A stable system protects wealth. A controlled system preserves influence. A dependent population ensures predictability. The first obvious component of the modern trap was created with central banking. The Federal Reserve, sold to the public as a safeguard against financial instability, quietly transferred monetary power from the many to the few. Control over currency, credit, interest rates, and liquidity meant control over the economic heartbeat of the nation. But central banks didn't operate in isolation. They relied on and collaborated with private institutions that already held enormous influence. Then came the international layer. After World War II, as empires collapsed and a new world order emerged, the architects of the economic system seized an opportunity. Global institutions like the IMF, World Bank, and later the WTO were established under the banner of cooperation and development. But the fine print told another story. Nations that accepted loans accepted terms, and those terms created dependency. Debt became not only a domestic tool, but a geopolitical one. You cannot escape a system if entire countries cannot escape it. In the 1970s, something shifted. The world abandoned the gold standard. Money, once tethered to physical reality, became an idea, a promise, backed not by metal, but by trust. And when money becomes abstract, those who control its supply become untouchable. They gain the ability to create liquidity out of nothing, to manipulate cycles, to expand or contract economies at will. But monetary power alone wasn't enough. The next phase required corporate power. Over the next 40 years, corporations consolidated at an unprecedented pace. Media conglomerates swallowed independent voices. Retail giants crushed small businesses. Tech companies grew into global empires. Pharmaceuticals, agriculture, energy, transportation. Each sector came to be dominated by a handful of megacorporations. And each of those megacorporations relied on the same financial institutions that controlled the flow of capital. This created a feedback loop. Corporations needed banks. Banks needed stability. Governments needed corporations. And the public needed all of them. Dependence became the rule, not the exception. But there was still one missing piece: behavioral control. Because even the most perfectly engineered system is vulnerable if the population questions it. That's where media, education, and information come in. Throughout the late 20th century, these institutions subtly shifted from informing the public to shaping perception. The goal wasn't propaganda, it was framing. If people believe debt is normal, they will accept debt. If people believe infinite growth is necessary, they will support policies that create it. If people believe the system is too complex to understand, they will never attempt to challenge it. Complexity became a shield. When institutions grow too large, too technical, too global, accountability dissolves. Responsibility becomes distributed across so many layers that no one can explain exactly who is in charge. And that ambiguity is not a flaw. It's part of the architecture. Because a system is most effective when the people inside it can't locate the walls. The designers understood something profound. The strongest prisons are not enforced by guns or guards, but by perception. When people cannot imagine a life outside the system, they never attempt escape. And so, modern life was designed to eliminate alternatives. Try living without a bank account. Try functioning without digital access. Try securing housing without credit. Try earning a living without participating in corporate or bureaucratic structures. Each path leads back into the system. But here's the most brilliant and disturbing part of the design. The system adapts faster than people do. As technology grew, the system upgraded itself. Credit scores replaced human judgment. Algorithms replaced gatekeepers. Identification systems replaced anonymity. The more digital the world became, the more control shifted toward the institutions that controlled the data. And unlike human gatekeepers, algorithms do not negotiate. They do not empathize. They do not forgive. They measure. They categorize. They predict. And they enforce. What debt once did to people's finances, algorithms now do to their lives. The trap evolved yet again. The walls became invisible. And escape became mathematically improbable. Today, we live in a world where 3 asset managers influence most public companies. Where a handful of tech platforms mediate communication for billions. Where credit bureaus determine whether you can rent a home, get a job, or buy insurance. Where global institutions are more powerful than elected governments. And the individuals who benefit? They are no longer the industrial barons of the 1900s. They are institutional heirs, not by blood, but by position. CEOs, investors, policy designers, central bank officials, and tech architects. The who has shifted, but the function remains the same. Power concentrates. Control expands. The system strengthens. Now the question isn't who built the system. The question is what comes next. Because the next evolution of the trap is already taking shape, and it targets something far more valuable than your money, your time, or your choices. It targets your identity. If money was the first trap, and debt the second, and algorithms the third, then the next trap is something far more intimate. Something so personal, so integrated into daily life, that resisting it becomes nearly impossible. The next trap is your identity itself. In the past, identity was simple. Who you were, where you lived, what you did, and the community that knew you. It was local, human, and difficult to control at scale. But today, identity has migrated from society into systems. You no longer own your identity. You access it through accounts, databases, and digital certificates. This shift didn't happen overnight. It happened step by step, through conveniences that slowly turned into requirements. Online banking made finance easier, then made it impossible to function without it. Social media connected people, then became the primary gatekeeper of speech. Smartphones enhanced communication, then became the mandatory interface for daily life. Every innovation came with a trade, a bit more ease in exchange for a bit more dependency. But identity migration isn't just about convenience, it's about consolidation. Because once identity goes digital, control goes with it. Every login, every transaction, every movement creates data. That data is harvested, analyzed, sold, repackaged, and transformed into behavioral prediction. You may think you're browsing, scrolling, purchasing, but in reality, you're feeding the system information about who you are, what you want, what you fear, and how you can be influenced. And the architects of the system realized something extraordinary. Data is more powerful than money. Money shows what you have. Data shows who you are and who you will become. In the past, banks wanted your deposits. Corporations wanted your purchases. Politicians wanted your vote. But today, institutions want your patterns. Because once they understand your patterns, they can predict your behavior. And once they can predict your behavior, they can shape it. This is the essence of the identity trap. It turns people into profiles. Profiles into datasets. Datasets into assets. And assets into leverage. But the system doesn't stop at prediction. It pushes towards something far more controlling. Digital identity as a requirement for participation. Around the world, digital ID frameworks are becoming standard. Biometric passports, facial recognition systems, digital wallets, QR-based verification. They're sold as tools of convenience and security. But step back and see the structure. Each layer adds one more dependency, one more lock, one more requirement. You can live without cash, but you can't live without identification. You can't access healthcare. You can't travel. You can't apply for work. You can't use most digital services. Identity is no longer a right. It's a key. And whoever owns the lock controls the world behind the door. Now consider the next phase, programmable systems. Central banks are exploring digital currencies with traceable, controllable features. Algorithms can determine eligibility for credit, insurance, even housing. Social behavior, what you post, who you follow, what you support, can alter your access to opportunities. In such a world, freedom doesn't disappear. It simply becomes conditional. The system doesn't restrict you explicitly. It restricts access, not through punishment, but through friction, not through force, but through limitations. You are free to criticize, but your reach will be reduced. You are free to opt out of digital life, but you will be isolated. You are free to reject subscriptions, services, networks, but the world will no longer accommodate you. This is how identity becomes the final stage of the inescapable system. By making itself essential for everything. By embedding itself in every transaction. By becoming the currency that the modern world runs on. And once identity becomes digital, it becomes editable. Think about that. Your identity can be suspended, restricted, modified, or revoked. A bank can freeze your account. A platform can remove your access. A database can flag you. An algorithm can downgrade your trust score. Each of these actions, in isolation, seems small. But together, they create a new reality. The system can erase your ability to function, not by imprisoning your body, but by disconnecting your identity. This is the ultimate leverage, the ultimate form of control, the ultimate trap. Because in the digital age, to disconnect someone is to erase them. And the most striking part? People aren't resisting it. They're adopting it willingly. We upload our faces. We give our fingerprints. We save our passwords in cloud vaults. We allow apps to track our location. We sync our contacts, photos, messages. We let organizations know our preferences, histories, weaknesses, desires. No force necessary. Just convenience. Convenience is the softest, most persuasive form of control. It doesn't demand obedience, it invites it. It doesn't restrict freedom, it trades for it. And we accept the trade every single day. So what happens next? The system will fuse your identity, your finances, your behavior, and your access into a single digital profile. And once that profile becomes the gateway to everything, mobility, employment, communication, healthcare, education, the system will no longer need to enforce control. Control will be automatic. Control will be structural. Control will be embedded in the very logic of participation. The system has been evolving for over a century. Money was the foundation. Debt was the reinforcement. Labor dependency was the glue. Algorithmic governance was the upgrade. Digital identity is the lock.